Welcome to Managing Through Crisis, the webcast featuring faculty from Harvard Business School sharing insights for managers on how to navigate through the COVID-19 crisis. It's May 21st, and as of yesterday, Connecticut became the last state in the U.S. to take steps towards reopening. The same is true in most other parts of the world with varying degrees of measure. Healthcare experts remain on high alert and continue to warn that subsequent waves of COVID-19 are likely to continue surfacing around the world until we find an effective vaccine or treatment. And with economic disaster looming on the horizon, political leaders are sweeping away barriers to drug testing and approval and encouraging pharma companies to redirect all their efforts to finding a cure. But at what cost? Today, we're fortunate to have Kathy Giusti here to talk about the implications, good and bad, that the rush for a cure is having on the rest of medical science, including researchers, doctors, and most importantly, patients. Kathy is a senior fellow and co-chair of the Kraft Precision Medicine's Accelerator at Harvard Business School. She's also the founder of the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation and the Multiple Myeloma Research Consortium. Boy, that's a mouthful. Kathy, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you, Brian.
I knew I was going to stumble over some of those things. There's a lot of words in those titles, but they're all important ones.
Yeah.
So I'd love you to start just by telling us a little bit about the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, the work that you're doing there, and also the Kraft Precision Medicine Accelerator at Harvard Business School.
Sure. So the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, I founded that with my twin sister in 1998, so a long time ago. And back then, Brian, it's kind of interesting. There were not that many research foundations. As a matter of fact, I remember spending a lot of time with Bob Bell at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and Debbie Brooks at the Parkinson's Foundation. And I think between the three of us, we really did shift the nonprofit sector to really look at the research side, which, we have loved, and I think it's made a huge difference. The beauty of the MMRF and the thing it has become known for is its disruptive business models. And I say that because, we were the first to build a collaborative tissue bank, which now has 4,000 samples. We were the first to sequence our genome with the Broad Institute. We were the first to build a clinical network. We started with 4 centers. Now it's 25 centers. And we were the first to actually put all of our data in the public domain with a study called Compass. And I think all of those business models that we created, somewhat disrupted the space, but they also drove toward these incredible results. So think about it. When I was diagnosed in myeloma, you lived 3 years at best. And today we can really look at our patients and the average lifespan is closer to 10 years. And it's a tribute to the entire myeloma community working together. The HBS Kraft Accelerator has been a joy for me to work on, an absolute privilege. What really happened there was Robert and Jonathan Kraft gave $20 million to the business school because Myra had lost her battle with ovarian cancer. And Robert and Jonathan were wise enough to know that business models could make science and technology move that much faster. So as a result of their endowment, Dean Noria called and asked me if I would come up and work across all cancers, all diseases, and really focus on the space of precision medicine, how to drive best practices forward and make sure many diseases saw the same kind of progress that we were seeing in multiple myeloma.
Yeah, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about that later in our conversation too, but I'm wondering, you're at the helm of these 2 really important organizations. You've been plugging away at this for a long time, and up comes this pandemic. What kind of impact has that had on you and how you're leading this work?
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, the pandemic has absolutely wreaked havoc on the entire nonprofit sector. So, I've been talking with a number of CEOs running many disease organizations. And Brian, it's almost like, when you talk with them, their revenue can be down anywhere from 25% to 75%. For some, I even wonder if they're going to make it. And a lot of the revenue decline comes from where your revenue portfolio is. For some of us, we have a mixed portfolio where some comes from events, some comes from different levels of donors, and some comes from industry partnerships. If you were highly reliant on events and now you're switching from your galas and dinners and walks to virtual events, it's hard to make that money up. For the MMRF specifically, we were very fortunate. I think our revenue will be down about 30% this year. But based off of our audit committee, we're always told no endowment, but have 1 year of cash on hand. And so for us, we also had to look and say, how much of our cost is fixed versus variable? That's like the first question you're going to ask yourself as a nonprofit in this field. We're so fortunate. We never built chapters. We never had like a big overhead structure. We're right in Norwalk, Connecticut, a very small, lean entrepreneurial team. And so we can be nimble and flex. So for the staff and the team that we had here, we had to really focus on a couple of things. One was make sure they felt safe and they knew where we were headed. Help them to understand that in an environment like this, we were trying to hold on to their jobs, but bonuses might be impacted, salaries might be impacted, and they were going to have to change their responsibilities. And then we worked side by side with our leadership team. Again, very fortunate that we have a very disciplined strategic plan. We were able to go through it, look at the top 3 pillars. They were immune, venture, and data, and decide together which ones could really move forward in a pandemic, which ones were going to move more slowly, and which ones might be placed on hold. And so we really had everybody on the team work side by side with us to make sure that we focused on anything that we could move forward and keep the company moving forward, despite some people feeling like there's a bit of a loss of control out there.
Yeah, I mean, these are hard strategic choices that leaders make in times like this, and probably really amplified in this kind of a situation. We've heard a lot, Kathy, about people being fearful of going in for treatment for the normal ailments that people have, whether that's people that have heart conditions or people that are dealing with cancer. I'm wondering what your observations are about the impact on this for patients in both kind of the short term and maybe in the longer term.
It's been really hard on the patients. And I think, running a disease foundation, you also have to realize that a lot of our patients are at the highest risk. So along with, working with all of our employees, we had to make sure we were immediately in touch with all of the patients we serve. And, all of the nonprofits, especially those focused on oncology and other diseases, had to be on their game here. Again, we were incredibly fortunate that we have a chief medical officer on staff here at the Myeloma Research Foundation. He is also on staff at Mount Sinai, and his name is Dr. Cho. We were lucky that he was able to get right on his iPhone and tape to our patients exactly what they needed to do, which was don't go to the hospital unless you have to. In today's world, absolutely use telemedicine. The second was, if you're on a drug that's an infusion, we may need to move you to an oral therapy. If you're on a clinical trial, the same thing might happen. And for some patients, you might have to wait to get your treatment, like a stem cell transplant. They just weren't happening over time. Now what's going on is, we had to come back and via film, directly talking to all of our patients, help them to know the other piece that I think was hard for them to hear. And that was the current clinical trials in oncology are on hold. And even the ones that were sitting in our pipeline, like some of these really great immunotherapy drugs, the pharma companies and biotech companies have to go back and look at their portfolios and make sure they understand what's going to move first in a COVID-19 world. So we feel like it's so important to be transparent with your patients and let them know that. But on the other hand, I would say the good news for us is, our antenna are up, our radar is on, and we're looking for every single idea that's coming out of this pandemic that we say that could drive and accelerate what we want to do in immunotherapy faster. So as soon as we can move, we have a lot of ideas of how we can move a lot faster to make up time for our patients. And we really want them to know that.
Are there any concerns on your end about the impact that this will have as we siphon funds into finding, a virus, a treatment for this virus or a cure? Will that take money away from other research efforts? Is there a fixed pie, and we have to worry about where the slices go?
There's always a fixed pie. I mean, there's only so much money that people have. And I think, what's going on now is it's forcing everybody to be really focused on what they need to get done. And I think for us, to give you an example, Brian, we felt like we had to let our staff and our patients know that we were going to move forward on one of the most disruptive initiatives that we were ever taking on at the MMRF. And initially, this launch of a program that we called Cure Cloud was going to happen in May. Now it is, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but it is a $30 million to $40 million initiative, right? So we have to take a risk and believe that we will raise the money around CureCloud now and get it off the ground. And so we took that risk, and we're literally on the phone virtually with all of our investors, talking with them about the need for this program and why we really hope they'll still support it. It's a whole new world of talking to your donors and investors, because you're not flying all over the country. You're sitting with them just like we are on Zoom and chatting with them. But for us, we felt that it was critical to launch in the pandemic. Initially, it was going to be at the end of May, face-to-face, big hoopla. Instead, now it will be the middle of July, and it will be virtual. But this program that we're launching is so critical to a cure. It's called CureCloud. And to give you just an idea of how innovation can move forward even in a pandemic, first, it has a blood biopsy component to it that we developed with the Broad Institute, meaning when we talk with our patients, they don't have to get a bone marrow biopsy. We have a phlebotomist go to their home, collect the blood, and it gets shipped to the Broad Institute, and we pay to sequence their genome. Once their genome gets sequenced, we also pull their electronic health record and their immune data, and we put all of that into one data set and a CLIA grade report for them, which means it's the highest quality. They get that report, now they can go talk to their doctor and have this amazing conversation about specifically what kind of myeloma they have. And then the third part is we created an entire visualization for them, a dashboard where they can talk to anybody and everybody that's in their community. So, as we talked about this precision medicine world, it is data driven. We had to go get the data as fast as we can, and we need these patients to support us. But hopefully, as all of these patients come in on the launch side, we'll start to be able to answer their questions that much faster. And I think for us, that was so critical. We knew we could move it forward in the pandemic. We knew we could do a lot of this work virtually. But I think that's what's really going to give our patients hope. I think it gives our team hope. Like, let's keep going. We have to. It's urgent.
Yeah, it's definitely a bold move. And it makes me wonder, you mentioned before that you've got your antennae up for looking for opportunities, which makes perfect sense, I think, in this kind of a situation. Are there parallels that you see that are playing out with the COVID-19 research, this sort of rush to find a vaccine, and cancer research? Are there things that you can learn from each other, and maybe approaches that you can share?
I'm so glad you asked me that. There are so many parallels, Brian. I would say the first two observations you have to make right off the bat is, number one, COVID-19 has shed a light on a very broken system. So going back to the beginning, I can tell you that people like myself, Debbie Brooks, Bob Bell, would have told you after decades of doing this, that the healthcare system is large, vast, fragmented, and the incentives don't align. There's reasons why it is hard to find cures and vaccines for COVID-19. It is not easy, and it's not easy in oncology or neurology either. But what we do see in COVID-19 that I find incredibly striking is that when the world knows the urgency, when there is a deadline, because 100,000 people could die, because so many people are losing their job, when there is a deadline on it, you see three important things. The first thing you see going on is all the decisions are being made at the highest of level. It's the CEOs, it's the head of NIH, it's the head of FDA, CDC. It's these people that can make decisions that are making them, and they're making them quickly. That is how you want to play the game. You want to get decisions made as fast as possible. The second is you're seeing this incredible collaboration. And I think some of it is happening across the academic centers and pharma companies naturally, but I think it's also amazing watching groups like Gates or Rockefeller, or even Duke Margolis is coming in. These are really, really smart third-party advisors fostering collaboration and doing beautiful work, and also offering funding. And then the third thing is, it's always about the money. When there is a boatload of money to be had, risks will be taken, and everybody will take a shot on goal, because you won't get penalized. You'll still get funded for trying to create a vaccine, trying to create a drug. And I think that has taught us one of the most important things we will ever see in drug development, and that is working in parallel instead of sequentially. So everything you're seeing right now is everybody trying to work in parallel instead of sequentially, and I love it. If you take the drug development piece apart and you say, well, let's break it out into testing, treatment, and prevention, which, if you listen to the news every day, that's kind of the way they keep focusing on it. On testing, what are you really hearing? You're hearing that we need one platform of standardized biospecimens and standardized data that we can all use to understand which diagnostic is going to work best. We didn't have that in COVID-19. By the way, it's why we're launching CureCloud. Most organizations and diseases don't have that, and it's really important. When you look at the treatment side, what you're seeing, things are off-label drugs being used, which is great. Expanded access with data following it. Master protocols with adaptive designs, which will help us identify new drugs faster, but also combinations faster. And then you're seeing things like patients are going to enroll in clinical trials because you're attracting them from digital advertising. You're also using telemedicine to make it easier to keep them in the trial. And then move to prevention. Now we've got great science like Moderna with an RNA vaccine. But think about prevention and just the people. If you're looking at that from an oncology standpoint, you're saying to yourself, imagine what the world would look like if every patient followed the screening guidelines, if they didn't smoke, if they watched their weight, if they even got the flu shot and the pneumococcal vaccine when they were supposed to. All of these things are behaviors that everybody should be watching right now and taking advantage of, because COVID-19 is showing us what happens in an urgent world. Well, you know what? Oncology, Alzheimer's, all of these diseases are pretty urgent too.
Yeah, and I think we've become just maybe numb to them a little bit over time. But what you're describing sounds like a new paradigm that might be emerging. And I guess so much of the system is built around risk aversion. We want to protect patients, so we do a lot of testing. Are we starting to see some of that risk aversion melt away a little bit, and maybe a little bit more openness to accelerating things and taking some chances that we might not have before?
I hope so. And I can say that, we had a board meeting yesterday at the MMRF, and our focus there was, get the blank sheet of paper out again and look at everything, every trend that is happening in COVID-19, post-COVID-19, and rewrite the plan. I think what's amazing about all of that is the timing on another launch that I've had the joy of working on up at Harvard Business School with Richard Hammermesh, and that goes back to the Kraft Accelerator, where again, we had 300 of the best people in the country on precision medicine that worked from direct to patient, to data, to clinical trials, to venture. They all joined us over and over again up on the campus at HBS. And one of the things we did see was a lot of the organizations, especially the disease organizations, lacked a strategic plan. So for Richard and me, we spent the last 6 months writing a precision medicine curriculum to launch online so that any nonprofit, any board member, any pharmaceutical or biotech company supporting these cure-seeking organizations could benefit. They can literally go into the curriculum, see every tool we developed, how we've written the MMRF strategic plans, every white paper ever written across our work streams on the Kraft Accelerator, every Harvard Business Review article Richard and I have written, in every case study we've done in precision medicine. And it's all ready for them with a bow around it. And that is launching at the end of June. And so again, these were huge opportunities that, for Richard and me, we wanted to get it done and we wanted to accelerate it, because right now is the time that every nonprofit, including the MMRF, should be re-evaluating everything it's doing. Because again, your antenna should be up, things should be changing, you should be watching what's happening in the system and become a better leader and a better organization.
Yeah, your timing's pretty good on that, by the way, Kathy.
Yeah, no, it was excellent.
You speak with such authority on this. I really want to thank you for your time today. I have one last question for you. I'm sure we have people who are watching this who are either cancer patients themselves, or they have a loved one who's dealing with the disease. Is there anything you might say to those folks as they kind of work their way through this pandemic situation that we're all faced with?
Yeah, I always tell patients the same thing, and it's kind of a mantra that is always in the back of my head. It's a program we actually worked on up at HBS called The Right Track, and that is, it doesn't have to be complicated. When you move through your cancer or disease diagnosis, you have to get to the right team, and that means a doctor who sees a lot of patients with your disease. You have to get the right test, and that means go in and ask for the genomic or immune testing so you know exactly your subtype, and then get the right treatment or get on a trial. And all along the way, share every bit of data you can, because it will help you and it will help others to find a cure. And the other message I always try to give to patients is, don't ever give up. I mean, I was diagnosed years and years ago at 37 and told I would never see my daughter go to kindergarten. And now, I have 2 adult children and have, lived an amazing life. You never know what a year in today's world, where science and technology is moving this fast, a year could potentially buy you a lifetime. So don't ever give up.
Yeah, you've lived an amazing life and helped a lot of other people in the process and continue to do so. I guess one last thing is, how can people find out more about MMRF or the Kraft Precision Accelerator? I assume they can find those things on the internet?
Exactly. They just go to Google HBS Accelerator and MMRF, and both will come up.
Kathy Giusti, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Brian, for having me.